Is this good or bad? I mean, there's no good. I'm just in a waiting and watching pattern at this point because shit is not all right. It's not all right. It hasn't been all right in a while, and it's just getting more and more insane out there. All right, let's get started. On the news, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded the war cabinet. Let's take a look at what's going on in Israel, and then we're going to move on, and we'll do some more fun news as well today. Like we'll do a variety day.
Developments in the war in Gaza. The Israeli military has announced a daytime pause in the fighting in a narrow strip of territory in the south to allow more aid to get in. And this morning, in a sign of new political...
By the way, before the war cabinet disbanded, okay, let me tell you something, okay? They got smoked. 12 IDF, Israeli occupying force soldiers, got absolutely packed up. Pack watch time for them. Apparently, there was a massive ambush in Rafah. 12 of them just packed up, straight up, gone. RIP bozo shit, okay? That's already also happening. That's already also happening in North Gaza, where Israel's supposed to be controlling the territory. So they're not doing all right. They're not doing all right at all. They're getting swept up. Yeah, the Israeli diaper forces are not doing great. Not doing great at all. You know, they smoked a 49-year-old warrant officer and his 23-year-old captain. Yeah, I saw that. A 55-star general got clapped. Okay, bro. Yeah, 19-year-old captains are getting RIP bozoed on a regular basis over here.
Political tensions over the conduct of the war. Israeli Prime Minister, that's Benjamin Netanyahu, disbanded an influential decision-making group. Chris Livesay has that part of the story.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dissolved his war cabinet, once a coalition of rivals meant to sow unity during the conflict in Gaza. That changed last week when Benny Gantz, the leading moderate opponent of the prime minister, resigned over the absence of a plan to govern Gaza after the war. Many have feared Netanyahu would now lurch towards the hard right. The lynch.
Is this good or bad? I mean, there is no good. This is Israel we're talking about. There is no good, only bad, okay? Like, every single instance of like, instability in Israel literally just moves Israel further to the right for some reason. Is it bad or is it going to get worse? And the answer is it probably will get worse. I don't know where the Israel will go from here. I genuinely have no predictions. I'm just in a waiting and watching pattern at this point because shit is not all right. It's not all right. It hasn't been all right in a while, and it's just getting more and more insane out there.
Of his remaining support. The shakeup comes after Israel announced a tactical pause in the fighting along 7.5 miles of road in the Rafah area during daylight hours to allow more aid. In Gaza and around the Muslim world, it's the Islamic holiday of Eid al-Adha.
Because, like, you got the war cabinet on the one hand in a state of disarray, can't figure out what to do with Gaza. What is the after-war plan for Gaza? There is no after-war plan for Gaza. Obviously, internally, there's a shit ton of commotion within the war cabinet, within the actual government. Like, it's basically like genocide plus ultra, omega genocide, and those are like the three warring factions, right? You got normal genocide guys who are just like, okay, we're doing ethnic cleansing and that's great and that's fine. That's like the Benny Gantz division. And then you got the genocide plus guys who are like the Benjamin Netanyahu division. And then you have the genocide plus ultra guys, which would be like the Bezalel Smotrich and the Itamar Ben-Gvir coalition. The genocide plus ultra guys are basically running around being like, we should do the genocide in Gaza and then do more genocide in Lebanon. Benny Gantz being like the center right person, disbanding or leaving the coalition alongside. There's another guy. What was it? The other dude's name? God, the other dude is so lame that he's like not getting any play whatsoever. I'm forgetting. Eisenkot, right? Yeah. So Eisenkot and Benny Gantz left. Benny Gantz is supposed to be like the actual. Was it Eisenkot? What's the fuck's the other guy's name? Yeah, I think. Yeah, this is pretty funny. Eisenkot accuses Prime Minister of delaying Rafah offensive by 3 months due to political interest. He's the in interviews, ex-war cabinet observer says Netanyahu's intimidated by the far right and should resign. Says he regrets not pushing harder to extend November truce to get more hostages out. So I think this is pretty fair speculation that like Benjamin Netanyahu probably timed this hostage extraction to like say fuck you to Benny Gantz. Like, I think it's a valid reason to speculate this. Like, they were like, oh, yeah, we're working on this for months. And then he kind of timed it when Benny Gantz was saying, like, I'm going to leave the war cabinet. I'm going to leave the war cabinet. I have, like, you know, bullet points as to why I'm going to leave the war cabinet because you suck. You are this up. You're in the bag up. I'm much better at doing genocide. I am literally the genocide guy. Like, let me do it. I'm the genocide guy. I've done war crimes. I am a general. I will do the right thing. America likes me. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu is like, absolutely not. I don't care. You're a pussy. I'm the one who can, you know, I'm the one who will never allow the Palestinians to have statehood. I've been in this game for far longer than you. You're just like a gay ass general. You don't know your shit. I can continue controlling the Israeli far right and therefore extend my, extend my time as the head of the state so I don't go to prison. I can avoid jail. And that's my primary function here. And it seems like that those internal contradictions have inevitably yielded this implosion within the war cabinet. So yeah, that's the situation. Meanwhile, you got an untenable situation in southern Gaza. Okay, the Gaza envelope is not exactly restored. People don't want to live there because they're afraid, and also the wounds have not healed, and also the Israeli government is not spending enough money. They're too busy demolishing, Negev and doing internal colonialism instead of just like investing and reinvesting in the Gaza envelope, which they claim they're going to do. Northern Israel is cooked. 60,000 Israelis have left northern Israel. People are just leaving Israel in general. The Israeli government, the Israeli government is in a state of disarray. The Israeli economy is in a state of disarray. They are so horny to do genocide overall that they're just kind of like, no, this is our main focus right now. People are leaving Israel. Israel is becoming more and more of a social pariah. Its economy is cooked. You don't have the Palestinian slaves that you normally would have, you know, the indentured servitude of Palestinians that you could easily utilize from the Gaza Strip with worker permits. They're gone because obviously now they're like, well, every Palestinian is a terrorist, so like we can't have them in inside of the colony. So reinvesting to the benefit of who? Do Gazans get access to the rebuilt city? No, I'm talking about the Gaza envelope, which is on the other side of the Gaza border, inside of the Green Line, inside of what you would consider Israel proper. Gaza Strip is where all the Palestinians are at the open air prison. Gaza envelope, and this is a confusing thing that happens all the time, especially when you literally translate from Hebrew to English. A lot of people will be like, "What the f***? They're building inside of Gaza? What is happening?" Like, or they're putting tanks through Gaza or whatever, when half the time they're talking about the Gaza envelope. Hiding behind the mic too much. Big insecurity for real, for real. Are you talking to me? Like, what do you mean? Nah. Okay. In any case, where were we? But yeah, situation is not great. Situation is not great inside of Israel. And of course, as things worsen, as material conditions worsen inside of Israel, what would a fascist administration do? Well, of course, a fascist administration would just like hit the one note that they know how to hit, which is, of course, to try personally and, invade Lebanon. He tweeted a video about you this morning. Haters are going to be plentiful today. I don't think so. It seems to me like we are hater free. So are they going to collapse or what? Can they please hurry up and collapse already? It always feels like every week something happens. It's not going to work. It doesn't work like that. But Israel is currently holding on by a thread. Israel's personally being kept alive by America. That's it. America is keeping Israel alive. That's it. Live and alive. Can we talk about another Biden old clip? We got gaming frogs. They're your biggest haters. All right, let's continue.
Muted.
Oh, by the way, Intel has suspended its plans in Israel. By the way, BDS pressure works. Tech giant Intel has halted construction of a new $25 billion factory in Israel, according to Israeli financial sources. Intel still remains deeply complicit in feeding Israel's genocidal war chest, so let's escalate our boycott Intel campaign. Something to also consider. And this kind of shit is happening all around. You hear like every now and then, you'll hear like randomly, you'll be like, Japanese bed and breakfasts are not are telling Israeli tourists like they might be aiding and abetting someone who's connected to the IDF, which would be aiding and abetting a war criminal, and therefore they can't do that. So like this kind of pressure, and it seems like for people they go, whoa, that's racist. Like that's racist as shit. That's so racist. And it's like, oh, that's anti-Semitic. They're just doing that for Jews. It's like, no, they're not doing that. They're doing that to a nation, to a population of people. There's Israeli Jews in this chat as well, obviously. And I suspect that they too understand that this is a negative byproduct for at least a short period of time until the Israeli population turns around and goes, we are becoming a pariah state. We have to change things. Okay? This is a negative consequence of, the nation state of your origin literally doing an ethnic cleansing campaign. Anyway, I remember Russians got upset they couldn't buy in Chanel and Gucci at the start of the invasion, like boohoo. Yeah, this happened to Russia as well. Yup, and hitting the anti-Semitic button isn't going to work anymore for these tourists. No, it's just like Japan probably wishing it could say the same to occupying U.S. soldiers, to be honest. No, it's not even like a national thing. This is not even a national policy at this point, but more and more pressure building up like this is good, because ultimately a lot of people think about the apartheid in South Africa and say like, well, the apartheid ended in South Africa. How did it end? It ended democratically. How did it end democratically? Well, because of BDS, literally boycott, divestment, and sanctions on the state of South Africa, as long as it maintains its apartheid. That is what caused the white population to change their attitude, recognizing that they had become a social pariah in the Western world that they actually enjoyed allegiances in, that they enjoyed flying over to and participating in. Once people started looking at them weird, once like the overarching majority population attitude towards apartheid South Africa was so sullied and so negative that you had the likes of Joe Brandon, Genocide Joe himself, Jim Crow Joe himself at the time, delivering impassioned speeches in Congress about how the South African apartheid must end. This is one of the gravest injustices you've ever heard. All of a sudden, South Africans themselves basically were like, okay, we got to change this shit up. We got to change this. We got to, delete this apartheid. We can't keep it. We can't keep it going, because at that point you're at odds. You're like, on the one hand, you have white supremacy. Okay, bro, this guy keeps saying you have spinach or something stuck. What is happening? No, I don't. Shut the fuck up. Here, I don't have anything stuck in my tooth. Why are you guys doing this? Is this like a new thing? Is it a new meme? Or is this just the one guy? Anyway, there's two interests at the time in South Africa, right? You have, on the one hand, people who want to maintain the apartheid, people who want to not live around black people, people who do not want to give black people the same rights, okay? And on the other hand, they also want to keep being able to travel to the Western world and like not have to hide that they're South African, for example. You know what I mean? And obviously, those two interests become at odds when there's a shit ton of pressure, a shit ton of public pressure, a shit ton of direct action. So that is the reason why ultimately people were like, yeah, we love this racism shit, but honestly, we should probably abolish this apartheid, because like I still want to be able to travel to the Western world. I still want to be able to do business in the Western world. And we can't really do that right now. All right. Hopefully, inshallah, one day the same will happen to Israel as well. Let's continue.
For this displaced family, taking refuge in a stable. Our hearts break when we hear of people eating Eid sweets, this grandmother tells our CBS News team in Gaza. The Biden administration says Hamas is stalling a deal to release 120 remaining hostages in exchange for a ceasefire. But if this pause holds, it could at least address some of these overwhelming needs as Israeli forces pursue the remaining Hamas brigades in Rafah. In central Gaza, 9 people were killed overnight when a home was struck. Here, the tactical pause does not apply. The fighting goes on.
Tactical pause.
The war cabinet now...
By the way, you have to remember, this also is, there are logistical issues with delivering aid to every part of Gaza, obviously, because the roads are blown up. That's one issue. Then there's also the secondary problem, which is that Israel refuses to let in aid into Gaza to begin with. Even if they do a tactical timeout, on the genocide, which they don't actually full-blown timeout on the genocide, okay, they still won't let in a lot of, or the necessary amount of aid. They've increased the amount of aid that is being let in currently in this time frame, but that still is not enough.
Dissolve was also built to bypass those far-right members of Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Well, sources tell CBS News those same far-right ministers will continue to stay outside of the day-to-day decision-making of the war. Gail?
Chris Livesay reporting from Tel Aviv. We thank you.
An Israeli official says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded the war cabinet, which was responsible for key decisions relating to the Israel-Hamas war. It was formed in the days after the October 7th Hamas attacks. The decision comes after opposition leader Benny Gantz withdrew from the body last week. Meanwhile, Israel's military announced a daily tactical pause along a specific route and specific times to allow for humanitarian aid into Gaza. The IDF later clarified that its troops are still fighting in Rafah and parts of Gaza. CNN's Paula Hancock is joining us now from southern Israel. Paula, let's start with Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to disband his war cabinet. What's behind that decision?
Well, Amara, in the war cabinet, there were always 3 men who were basically making the decisions, which was the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, and the opposition leader, Benny Gantz. Now, of course, since Gantz has resigned, saying he's in protest of the fact there's...
Safest nation for the Jews is so laughable because they literally ship out high school graduates to Gaza to get murked. Bibi and his cabinet is insane. Yeah. Dude, you don't understand. It's the safest nation for the Jews. So safe. Except, you can't live in northern Israel any longer because there's wildfires happening all the goddamn time. You don't want to live in the Gaza envelope any longer either. There's uninhabitable parts of the Israeli desert that they are actively trying to destroy the Bedouin Arab communities that exist on top of it, specifically so they can resettle those lands. But ultimately, it's just like not really safe. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe at all. Directly as a consequence of the genocidal ambition that the government has. A genocidal ambition that is absolutely reflected within the population as well, because they're constantly cycling this narrative that Palestinians ain't shit and they deserve less and they're not real humans. So no, you can't claim that this is a safe space when the entire national mythos is built around a fascist ideology of Jewish supremacy and consistent dominance over the indigenous population of the lands that it occupies. It's just not going to happen. Stop projecting, please. What do you mean? Why do I have a feeling like this guy is full of BS? OMG, I'm so happy you're back. Says on 3/5/2022, and then hits me with that. That's cool. Ethno-states inherently breed conflict, period. Exactly. You cannot personally have a safe space while simultaneously engaging in endless war. It's just not going to work that way, okay? Just like, the Nazi Germany was not exactly a safe space for Germans. Why was it not a safe space for Germans either? Obviously, people don't give a shit about that side of the conflict as much because they were like murking, every minority group possible while also creating living space for the Volk, the ethnic Germans. But why was it not safe for the Germans? Because obviously, inevitably that kind of fascist opinion, that fascist attitude is going to turn into a death cult. It's going to inevitably turn the crosshairs on whoever is considered whoever was considered formerly to be a part of the in-group. Here, you wanted me to look at this. The war in Gaza has wiped out entire Palestinian families. AP documents 60 who lost dozens of more. Words besides genocide, U.S. news outlets use to describe genocide. Yeah. I mean, that's precisely what it is. The war in Gaza has wiped out entire Palestinian families. I wonder how. I wonder why. You are too obsessed with what random chatters say. The reason why I am quote unquote obsessed with what random chatters say is because this is a very important opportunity to address very common talking points. I believe that a lot of people personally might have some confusion. And I think it's important to address that instead of like let it fester and get chatters to I don't know, go on their own journey and get radicalized in the wrong direction and then have these like really strong convictions on something like an ethnic cleansing campaign happening. So that's the reason why I try to do everything I can to talk to chatters who are maybe in the throes of misinformation, who are like close, who are still charitable, who are still understanding, who still are on their journey of learning stuff. You might already know, hey, Professor Galloway says if you don't want a genocide, maybe don't take hostages. What are you talking about? I don't know who Professor Galloway is, but you know, one could say that against Israel 1,000 times over, but let's continue.
Plan to get the hostages out, no day after plan for Gaza, and not a plan to get people back to northern Israel as well who've been evacuated. It is now effectively a two-person war cabinet. So what he has done is he's disbanded that, and he has said, according to an official in his office, that the decisions when it comes to the war in Gaza will be made on a security cabinet basis, which is a wider cabinet basis. Also saying that, or experts are saying that this kind of avoids the pressure that was coming from the far right of his coalition. Some of those far right elements wanted to be part of the war cabinet. So by disbanding it, potentially he has got rid of that problem as well. He doesn't have to accept or reject them because he does have a balancing act when it comes to his coalition at this point. But they do say within the Prime Minister's office this won't make a difference to actually making the decisions on the war in Gaza. And if they have to, they will have smaller groups to decide tactical changes. Amra?
And regarding that tactical pause, if there is still fighting going on in Rafah and parts of Gaza.
The pause is so tactical, you might not even be able to, if you just, it's so tactical, you might miss it. You know what I mean? I love how tactical the pause is. So, you know, if you're not paying extra close attention to the bombing campaigns, you might actually miss that there is a pause happening at all. You know, in between the tactical pause, again, as we covered already, 9 civilians were murked. So, you know, it's that tactical.
As the IDF says, is this tactical pause in effect to allow humanitarian aid in?
So this is a pause that comes from the Kerem Shalom crossing where we just were, and it goes into Gaza and then up the Salahadin Road, which is effectively the north-south road that runs through Gaza. Now, from the IDF's point of view, they say that they are securing that road, so it will be safe for international aid organizations to distribute aid, which they say is stuck on the Gaza side of the Kerem Shalom border. They say there's more than 1,000 trucks that are there currently. But we've spoken to some of those aid groups, including the UN groups in Gaza, and they say that sometimes it is simply too dangerous for them to be able to get to that crossing and pick up the aid. It's not just the fighting that they're concerned about, it's also the sense of lawlessness in Gaza. There is a lot of looting. They say it's very dangerous for them to be able to try and distribute the aid. I did ask the IDF spokesperson if there would be some kind of military escort with these trucks to try and get the aid in, and that was not answered. So at this point, it doesn't appear that that would be the case. We've also heard from the Gaza Media Office saying that as far as they're concerned, there's been no tactical pause. So they believe that it is Israeli lies in their words. Now, the IDF has been quite clear that the fighting will continue. It will continue in Rafah, which is very close to where this route is for the tactical pause, as they will be continuing what they have been doing.
It's great. It's like they just get to say whatever the they want, and there's no real mechanism of pushback against Israel, so it doesn't really matter. The tactical pause doesn't actually necessarily mean that there's a real pause. The safe zones doesn't necessarily mean that they're safe at all. And there is no real like rules of war that Israel normally is supposed to abide by. And there is no media apparatus that actually calls it out as it is. The New York Times, as a matter of fact, recently, over the weekend, conducted its investigation, or at least finalized its investigation into what is now known as the Tent Massacre. You guys want to know what the conclusions were? Well, the conclusions were exactly what we've been saying since the beginning of the Tent Massacre, that Israel actually lied about these secondary explosions happening at a munitions depot that was, next to where the target was. Israel lied about that too. They have never stopped lying. At this point, it's like if you're actually paying attention to what Israel is saying and what Israel is doing, there's no way you could ever trust them. There's no way whatsoever. Israel is actually destroyed. What kind of trust you could have, what kind of confidence you could have in them being honest by consistently lying over and over again. But it doesn't matter, because no matter what happens, Israel will literally still do the same exact thing, and the dumbasses in the media will still act like what they're saying is correct, what they're saying is honest. I don't know how to manage the situation at this point when people are just like very obviously consistently lying at the behest of the Israeli government, right? At a certain point, you have to start recognizing that the media is complicit in this genocide. According to Channel 12 Israel, Blinken told BB US will remove all limits on weapons transfers. So much for the red line. Oh, nice. Thank God. I doubt it, but I don't know if they'll go that balls to the wall, but we'll see.
Amara?
All right, Paula Hancock's watching this for us from southern Israel. Thank you, Paula. Meanwhile, a U.S. special envoy arrives in Israel Monday as tensions escalate on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. CNN's Ben Wiedemann is joining us now live from Beirut. Ben, UN officials are warning that there is a very real danger of miscalculation escalating the conflict along the Israel and Lebanon's border. What have you learned?
Well, what we've been seeing is that certainly in the last few weeks, things on the border have gotten much hotter in terms of the daily back and forth between Hezbollah and Israel. Although I must add that it's currently a Muslim holiday, and yesterday, at least from Hezbollah's side, they didn't fire anything at the Israelis as far as we can tell. But this envoy, Amos Hochstein, who's the senior energy advisor at the White House, and he's really the point man in dealing with the Lebanon-Israel file for the United States. He's in Israel now. We assume, although it has not been officially announced, that he's going to be coming to Beirut in the coming days. Nonetheless, what is obvious?
Hamas not lying, not willing to do any genocide? Question mark. Pro-Palestinians weren't there for Syria or Ukraine. Wait, what? Dude, this is yet another clear indication that like Hasbro operations have fallen so far apart that there are literally there is just like the most absurd level of whataboutism going on. You know what I mean? One, Hamas not lying. I never said that Hamas doesn't have the capacity to lie. So far, though, you have to look at what their statements have been, what their goals have been, and what their information delivery has looked like so far. They have a much clearer track record. You might not hear about it that much because you only hear about Hamas. You only hear about Hamas from either Israeli authorities or from the Western media, which rarely ever looks at what they have to say at all and will very rarely interview the actual envoys from Hamas, like on the Politburo side of things. Not willing to do genocide, question mark, is also ridiculous. There is no reverse genocide happening. There is no reverse genocide narrative, okay? And pro-Palestinians weren't there for Syria or Ukraine is also insane. I don't know I don't know how to deal with this whatsoever. Number one, this does not mean that Israel gets to do an ethnic cleansing campaign upon the Palestinian population. But secondly, you have no idea what those people's opinions are on Syria or Ukraine. Not that it matters, but it is a pretty ridiculous thing to talk about. You have no idea. You just kind of drop that in here. Yep, still, don't get me wrong, Netanyahu's a piece of shit, but I find pro-Palestinians one-sided on that. I haven't seen people's in the street for Syria. It doesn't matter. That is not you cannot, okay, the Holocaust happened. You can't literally be like, where were the Jews for the Armenian genocide? Sucks to suck. Like, do you see what I mean? That would be ridiculous, right? If you were to say like, oh, none of the Jews were out there protesting for the Armenian genocide, would be a ridiculous argument to make. You can't match what the people's opinions are on one genocidal action versus the other. Okay? I saw a 3-month-old in hospital. You didn't condemn. That is not my point. I get your point, but mine is all of a sudden the world is awakened on that cause and not others. Yes. You want to know why? Because Syria, for the most part, is seen as like Western interference in the civil war that ripped through a brown country. Okay, it's brown on brown violence, I guess, which is something that people don't care about as much. Okay, that is the reality. And also to say that like people don't care about it is ridiculous. It definitely was something that a lot of people cared about in terms of the Obama administration. That's number one. Number two, the reason why all of a sudden the world is awake is because for 76 years, Israel has gotten away with doing all this shit. And this is one of the few instances where a lot of people have actually paid attention and have learned about the 76 years of atrocities and the ongoing atrocities that Israel is engaging in. And atrocities that could never happen if it wasn't for the unconditional support of the United States of America. And that's precisely the reason why a lot of people are frustrated, because they're like, well, my roads suck. I have no health care. I have no future prospects. And it seems like the only reason why we don't have enough money in the banana stand for any of these things is because a lot of the money is going directly to America's endless imperialist ambitions. That kind of sucks. I don't want my tax dollars to go and fund baby murder weapons. I want my tax dollars to fund hospitals. I want my tax dollars to fund education. And that's precisely the reason why a lot of people are understandably frustrated, because they realize that like for maybe the past 76 years, or at least like for as long as they've known, as long as they've developed a conscience, they weren't very aware of what Israel was doing. And they weren't aware of the dynamic between Israel and America. And now they're recognizing it, so they're understandably frustrated. The only reason why you're also frustrated and you're going, why do they care about this and not other stuff, is because you're not used to it either. I feel like I didn't get that many people on those slaughters for Palestine. That is my point, but keep your stream. Thank you for exposing your point. I like your debates, and thanks for giving me the purpose for exposing mine. What? Ultimately, the notion that like people didn't care about Ukraine is ridiculous, okay? There is a global sanctions regime placed upon the Russian government for its unjustifiable and bloodthirsty imperialist ambitions in Ukraine. Like the idea that Russia is not being talked about is ridiculous. That's another thing. And the same goes for Syria. Yeah, you're coming into a community that has literally raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Ukraine as well, by the way. So, you know, I don't know what that point is. Yeah, people still very much care about Ukraine. It's just that the prospects are dire for Ukraine. And it seems like America is, interested in keeping it going for as long as they can. All right, let's continue.
Certainly from statements made by senior Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the signs we're getting from Hezbollah is that both sides are primed.
Orenatnal says the main reason that people care this much about Israel is because Israel is the U.S.'s direct foothold in the MENA region. Contrast that with the genocide of Sri Lanka is committing against the Tamils, where everyone has a material interest in propping up Sri Lanka, where not everyone has a material interest in propping up Israel. Sri Lanka committed the exact same war crimes we're seeing in Gaza right now to the letter. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's the same reason as to why people, I mean, this community is not one of them, but like I talked extensively about Myanmar, right? But a lot of people didn't. And that is because it's happening over there. It's like, I don't really understand it, and who cares? Whereas like we as American citizens have a direct involvement in Israel's affairs, and we are so goddamn connected. It is akin to like America doing Israel style actions in Afghanistan and Iraq. And plenty of people were critical of that too. So
for escalation.
Not that it matters though, because it's just pure whataboutism.
Goes out from South Lebanon in slick propaganda videos accompanied by a stirring soundtrack. Hezbollah is ready to go from daily skirmishes to full-scale war with Israel. Mired in what appears to be an unwinnable war in Gaza, Israel has vowed to turn its military might on Hezbollah. Earlier this month, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the border, saying, "We are prepared for very strong action in the north." But the Iranian-backed group is by far the most formidable, battle-hardened foe Israel has faced on its borders since the 1970s.
Listen, bro, the Israeli diaper brigades can't even do anything against like against guerrilla warfare of like recently orphaned teenagers. Okay, like not all of the Hamas militants or the Al-Qassam brigades or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad brigades, like not all of them are super highly trained individuals. Okay, they don't have like an incredible amount of combat experience. Hezbollah, on the other hand, does have an incredible amount of combat experience due to all of the operations that they conduct in the region in general. Okay, Hezbollah is also incredibly well armed in comparison to Hamas. They're not making Yasin rockets in a goddamn bathtub and deploying it on like $500 Yasin rockets they make off of like components that they grab from the ground of like Israeli munitions that or Israeli ordnance that doesn't explode or whatever. Okay, they have their own missile facilities. So ultimately, a war or an invasion into Lebanon, into southern Lebanon, is going to be history repeating itself. It will definitely be horrifyingly bad for everyone involved, but certainly for Israel. Unless Israel can directly get America to be involved. I doubt that America wants Israel to go into Lebanon, because that kind of broader regional conflict will awaken Iran and will genuinely cause problems. Like that is like World War III territory at that point. They have an actual standing military. They're actually experienced. Israel already is having a hard time with this like counterinsurgency shit that they're trying to do in Gaza. They're not going to be able to do that in southern Lebanon at all.
73 October War. After its guerrillas forced Israel to pull out of South Lebanon 24 years ago, in 2006, Hezbollah fought Israel to a standstill. Although the war left parts of Beirut and much of southern Lebanon in ruins. Retired Lebanese army.
That, by the way, is the Dahiyya Doctrine. Eisenkot is one of the architects have said the Dahiyya Doctrine, the person that we mentioned earlier. The Dahiyya Doctrine is just basically declaring the entire area to be enemy combatants and deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure. They are doing that in Gaza as well, obviously, and they want to do that in Lebanon once again. Ultimately, however, it's mass murder of civilians and destruction of mass murder of civilians and destruction of civilian infrastructure is not necessarily going to is not going to yield positive results for Israel in general.
Army Brigadier General Elias Hanna knows the militant group well.
Hezbollah is an
Yeah, here it is. Here's the proof of what I was saying. Israel must target civilian infrastructure in Lebanon. The pressure Hezbollah, IDSF head says. IDSF CEO Lieutenant Colonel Yaron Buskila discussed Israel's escalation with Hezbollah, emphasizing the need to hold both Hezbollah and Lebanon accountable. They have one speed, bro. They have one speed. One speed. That's it. And that's just bloody murder of the entire civilian infrastructure and civilian population. Isn't that terrorism? Yes, it is. But when it's a state doing it, especially a state that is aligned with the U.S., they get to do it. And it's not considered terrorism. Terrorism is resisting against such actions of terror.
Exclusive club, well-disciplined, monitored, and they have, which is the most important issue, a charismatic leader, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah.
Since October, Israeli strikes have killed more than 300 Hezbollah fighters, including last week high-ranking commander Talib Abdullah given a hero's.
Do you think the nature of war has changed so much that there cannot be any more real clear victories without total population wipeout? I think that they just used to do total population wipeout back in the day. Settler colonies before the advent of the internet or, or any kind of media apparatus. When in the old days of telegram or carrier pigeons, people would just do that shit. And we would just kind of learn about it after the fact. History is riddled with these kinds of settler colonial actions. This country is literally built on top of settler colonial genocide upon the indigenous population. The difference is doing it in 2024 hits a little bit different. You know what I mean? It's pretty crazy to do it in 2024 because people are like, what do you mean? This is like what I learned in the history books about what we shouldn't be doing, you know? So when it's happening in real time and it's happening in like post-World War II universe where like we have this supposed rule-based international order that a lot of people take for granted, all of a sudden the dynamic is very different. You can't be laying siege on an entire civilian population like this. There's rules that you are supposed to abide by. Rules that even like America technically was supposed to abide by, even though it didn't necessarily abide by those rules, but never to the same degree as Israel even. So that is the major problem here. Like, one, Israel is not America, right? It's supposed to be an independent nation from the United States of America. Two, even though America did a shit ton of brutality and has done a shit ton of brutality and continues to do a shit ton of brutality, even in like Iraq and Afghanistan, what Israel is doing is basically like the first day of the Iraqi invasion, but for 8 months. Think about that. Like after the invasion of Iraq, basically America would still bomb villages, of course, regularly, but like they've never stopped doing shock and awe. Imagine if they never stopped doing shock and awe and just reduced the entirety of the densely civilian populated areas into rubble nonstop.
Farewell in Beirut. At the funeral, senior Hezbollah leader Hashem Safiuddin warned, "We will increase our operations in intensity and force, in quantity and quality." Analysts believe Iran has provided Hezbollah with an arsenal of sophisticated long-range missiles capable of reaching Tel Aviv and beyond. Until now, Hezbollah has mostly limited its strikes to military targets along the rugged mountainous frontier, hitting Israel's extensive...
I was timed out for 10 minutes because I asked about your Houthi interview. The dude wasn't a Houthi. He was a Yemeni teenager. I don't know what this is, but you got timed out because you were constantly posting this shit over and over again. So I don't know what is this? Israel's trying to start a war with Lebanon? What the fuck are you saying? Do you know how many times I had to run with my pregnant wife to the nearest bomb shelter because Hezbollah relentlessly firing rockets towards us civilians? You're pathetic. Move. Can you explain your Houthi controversy? There is no real controversy. Okay? There is no actual controversy. It's not even a Houthi militant or anything like that, even though I do reserve the right to interview whoever the fuck I want. And if anyone has an issue with that, they can suck my dick. Having said that, however, this was a Yemeni teenager that everybody just basically said was a Houthi and cried about it and complained about it. Meanwhile, you can go on a fucking sponsored trip to literally a genocidal nation currently doing an ethnic cleansing campaign and not a single person bats an eye. I wonder how that works. The very same individuals from the very same communities that have fucking complained endlessly about me interviewing a 19-year-old who survived a fucking American-backed genocide, okay, have no smoke whatsoever for someone doing, you know, genocide, pro-genocide propaganda by flying directly to Israel. That is sick. That's cool. That's dope. That's awesome. That's like on the ground reporting, right? Anyway, let's continue.
Network of surveillance posts. It also says it has taken out an Iron Dome battery, the backbone of Israel's missile defenses, and has used ground-to-air missiles to shoot down 3 top-of-the-line Hermes 900 drones. In the process, forcing tens of thousands of Israelis to flee their homes in the north. Hezbollah is learning faster than Israel can adapt, says Hanna.
They are learning. It's like learning process. It's like trial and error. So as far as you go in time, you are seeing more intensity, more combined use of weapon, and then more in depth and more in effectiveness against the Israelis. And
I know people who are Jewish and are opposed to Israel and the genocide in Gaza, but still think birthright is fair game because it's just a free trip on someone else's dime. Do you have thoughts on this? Yeah, I personally also used to think like whatever, you know, anti-Zionist or Zionist like go on birthright. But a lot of people that I do care about, whose opinions I do care about, have said it is infinitely better not to participate in birthright whatsoever because it is a direct fucking propaganda mission. It is indoctrination happening. So don't do it.
What is the problem? That the Israelis have no answer for that.
Since October, Israel has bolstered its forces on the border and held
Not everyone is going to be like Adam Friedland.
To prepare for war. Hezbollah is also ready for war. A war that is just one miscalculation away. Now, Mr. Hochstein is probably trying to convince the Israelis now is not a good time, given the situation in Gaza, to jump into a war with Lebanon. And of course, in Lebanon, given Hezbollah's strength and abilities to strike well inside Israel, the price for Israel would be very high. But Prime Minister Netanyahu is under intense pressure from the public in Israel to allow those people who fled the north to go back home. So they're really in a bind. Now, the one solution, and what has been seen before, is that in late November of last year, when there was an 8-day halt in the fighting in Gaza and there was a release of hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and detainees, the border along between Lebanon and Israel was quiet. Hezbollah has made it clear, if the fighting stops in Gaza, the border will be quiet. So probably a ceasefire is the best solution all around. Amara?
Ben Wiedemann in Beirut for us. Thank you so much.
Anyway.